There is a genre of video circulating right now. At 99, Mel Brooks names the actors he hated most. At 100, Mel Brooks finally reveals his blacklist. That promises a scandalous secret list, complete with private thoughts Brooks supposedly never shared and dinner table dialogue nobody recorded. These videos are entertaining. They are also, as far as any verifiable record shows, invented. There is no interview, memoir, documentary, or reputable profile in which Mel Brooks names 5 actors he hated. Several of the specific claims in these videos don't survive basic fact-checking, including the claim that Frank Langella was cast as Dracula and fired, which appears nowhere in the production history of Dracula. Dead and loving it, Harvey Korman played Dr. Seward from the start. Leslie Nielsen was cast as Dracula because Brooks watched him in Naked Gun 33 1/3 and thought he was perfect. Not because anyone was removed. So instead of repeating a fabricated blacklist, here's a more useful and more honest story. What Mel Brooks's actual 6-decade career tells us about the actors who fit his comic machine, the ones who didn't, and the difference between "we never worked together" and "he hated him," which turn out, on the record, to be very different things. Brooks has said the same thing in different words, across dozens of interviews over 70 years. Comedy for him is a group act. He wanted performers who could hold a straight face while the world fell apart around them, who trusted the joke over their own gravitas, and who could take direction without treating a scene as a personal showcase. That's a real, documented philosophy, visible in how he cast Leslie Nielsen, chosen specifically for his deadpan control, how he built ensembles around Gene Wilder, Madeline Kahn, and Harvey Korman, and how he talked about timing as something almost sacred. What's not documented is a secret enemies list. What is documented is a series of actors whose relationship with Brooks was more complicated, more collaborative, or simply less connected than a hated framing suggests. The claim that Brooks and Wilder had a bitter falling out after Young Frankenstein, that they didn't speak for years after Brooks supposedly refused to support him, doesn't match the documented record. What actually happened? After Young Frankenstein, 1974, producer Richard Roth approached Wilder about writing a Sherlock Holmes parody. Wilder came up with the idea of focusing on an invented, smarter brother, Sigerson Holmes, and asked Brooks to direct it. By Wilder's own account, Brooks turned it down for a specific, stated reason. He didn't like directing projects that weren't his own original idea, not because he doubted Wilder's readiness. Wilder called directing it himself a terrifying commitment, but he did it, and it became his directorial debut, The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother, 1975. Here's the detail the feud narrative leaves out entirely. Brooks appears in the finished film, in an uncredited voice cameo. That's not the footprint of a man who'd cut off contact. Wilder and Brooks continued to be photographed together, spoke warmly of each other in interviews for decades, and by every account remained personal friends for the rest of Wilder's life. When Wilder died in 2016, Brooks posted a public tribute calling him one of the truly great talents of the time and describing their partnership with unambiguous affection, not the tone of a man nursing a 40-year grudge. It's true they never made another film together after Young Frankenstein, but never worked together again, and cut him off, never spoke about him again, are not the same claim, and only one of them is supported by the record. Careers diverge for 100 boring reasons. Different projects, different decades, different creative interests, without requiring a betrayal narrative to explain them. If Brooks had actually blacklisted Harvey Korman after Tension on High Anxiety, 1977, it's hard to explain why Korman went on to appear in Brooks's next major comedy, History of the World, Part 1, 1981, and then again in Dracula, Dead and Loving It, 1995. Brooks's final film as director, released nearly 2 decades after their supposed falling out. Korman also appears with Brooks in Blazing Saddles, 1974, giving him a run of at least 4 Brooks productions spanning more than 20 years. That's one of the longest actor-director collaborations of Brooks's career, not a case study in permanent exclusion. Any creative friction that existed on individual sets, and creative friction is completely normal on any film production, clearly didn't end the working relationship, which is the part that actually matters when assessing whether someone was blacklisted. This is the one claim in the popular Blacklist videos that holds up on its face. Chevy Chase and Mel Brooks never made a film together, despite both working in mainstream American comedy through the same decades. That much is accurate. What isn't accurate is the confident narration of why, the idea that Brooks privately called him someone who crashed comedy instead of dancing with it, or that there was a documented near-casting for Spaceball's Dark Helmet that Brooks turned down specifically because of Chase. No interview or production history confirms either claim. Rick Moranis was cast as Dark Helmet. There's no reliable record of Chase ever being seriously considered. What's separately well documented, from a wide range of directors, producers, and co-stars across Chase's career, not from Brooks, is that Chase developed a reputation for being difficult on set. Director John Carpenter described working with him on Memoirs of an Invisible Man in blunt terms. Director Chris Columbus left National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation over how Chase treated him. Chase's later conflicts on Community with creator Dan Harmon were public and extensively reported, including on-set physical altercations with co-star Joel McHale. So the reputation the tabloid-style videos gesture at is real and sourced. It's simply not something Brooks personally said, and turning it into a quote attributed to him isn't something a responsible account should do. The honest version. Two prominent comic figures of overlapping eras simply never crossed paths professionally. That happens constantly in Hollywood without any grand explanation required. This is the clearest fabrication in the circulating videos. The claim is specific and checkable, that Langella was cast as Dracula in Dracula, Dead and Loving It, clashed with Brooks over tone during rehearsals, and was quietly replaced by Leslie Nielsen. But the documented production history of the film doesn't include Langella at any stage. Brooks has spoken on the record, including in DVD commentary and interviews, about why he cast Nielsen. He'd been watching him in the Naked Gun films and thought his combination of age, charm, and deadpan control made him perfect for the role. That's a positive casting story, not a recast after conflict story. There is no independent confirmation that Langella was ever attached to the project. Absent a source, this entry in the Blacklist appears to be invented outright, and it shouldn't be repeated as fact. Brooks and Lewis are frequently mentioned in the same breath as titans of a certain school of American film comedy, both writer-director-performers who built idiosyncratic comic universes. But there is no reliable sourced account of a specific dinner meeting, a Life Stinks casting dispute, or a private quote from Brooks calling Lewis brilliant and exhausting. These details, again, appear to originate with the same unsourced video genre rather than any interview, biography, or press account. What can honestly be said is more modest. The two men worked in adjacent lanes of comedy for decades without a notable on-screen collaboration, and neither has gone on record with detailed grievances about the other. Where there's no source, the responsible move is to say so rather than manufacture a scene. Strip away the invented dialogue and the private ledger framing, and what's left is something less sensational but more true to how filmmaking actually works. Mel Brooks did have a clear, consistent philosophy about the kind of performer his comedy needed. Someone who could commit fully to absurdity without protecting their own dignity, who trusted an ensemble more than a personal moment. That philosophy shaped real casting decisions. Nielsen over a serious dramatic actor, Moranis exacting deadpan for Dark Helmet, decades of loyalty to Korman despite whatever tension existed on any individual set. But turning "we had different working styles," or "we simply never crossed paths," into a decade-spanning secret enemies list required invented scenes, invented quotes, and at least one entirely fictional casting saga. Brooks, now past his 100th year, has spent his public life doing the opposite of nursing quiet grudges, eulogizing Wilder with real tenderness, working with Korman again and again across 2 decades, crediting collaborators generously in interview after interview. The most accurate headline isn't "The 5 actors Mel Brooks hated." It's simpler and less dramatic. Mel Brooks had a specific, demanding vision of what comedy required. Some actors fit it better than others, and almost none of what happened next looked anything like the story that's been circulating about it. This piece draws on production and cast records for Dracula, Dead and Loving It, 1995, and The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother, 1975, including cast/credit listings and behind-the-scenes interview material in which Brooks discusses his casting of Leslie Nielsen. Reporting on Chevy Chase's documented on-set conflicts with directors John Carpenter and Chris Columbus, and with community creator Dan Harmon, and general biographical and career records for Harvey Korman's 4. Documented collaborations with Brooks across Blazing Saddles, High Anxiety, History of the World Part 1, and Dracula, Dead and Loving It. Where no credible source could be found for a specific claim, the Langella casting story, a Brooks-Lewis dinner meeting, or any direct quote from Brooks describing hatred toward a named actor, that claim has been identified as unverified rather than repeated as fact.